So, asking these kind of questions, along with making some edgy takes, as in, of course, I'd let the kid fuck me, has ended up with a lot of controversy.
Fuck me sideways. I sure do hope that you appreciate the work that I do, Brandon. For fuck's sake. You're lucky that I don't charge your ass for this shit, B. But anyway, let's get on with this.
Today is going to be a fun-filled day talking about everything wrong with the anarchist community, from doxing, threats of harassment,
Slivers of pedophilia supporters?
a multitude of other things. So, where to begin? Just about everyone here knows now about the drama, about me being a supposedly pedophile.
Well, you have admitted before that you are a quote-unquote no-map, or in other words, non-offending, minor-attracted person.
For questioning how the age of consent would function in an anarchist society.
That's easy. I mean, I'm not an anarchist myself, but I would think that it would be determined based off of what's socially acceptable, based off of the brain development that happens within people, getting them to the point of where they can grasp the concept of consent.
And while yes, that question could make people very uncomfortable, these are questions that we need to ask.
No. I'm pretty sure that we as a society can survive without you having the quote-unquote right to fuck a kid.
As in, we can't just bend down to the law saying, well, i.e., law says this, therefore it's moral.
I won't deny that there's a segment of anti-pedo activists and pedo hunters that might make an appeal to the law to base their morality against pedophilia. But what about all the anti-pedo activists who make appeals to logic and science? Remember your debate against Gage the Doom guy, Cass Warfox, and all his buddies?
Issue with the whole, I don't believe that the age of 18 should be like the biggest consent thing either. I don't believe that the age of 18 should be like the universal standard for the entire country in terms of consent. However, I do believe that there should be some degree of mental maturity that is met before a person can be considered capable of making certain decisions for themselves. Don't let a 7-year-old gamble or drink or smoke or join the military or get a tattoo. It's because they don't have, like, especially people that are younger, like people like 13, like people around those ages and under, they do not have the type of maturity to really make a lot of these decisions for themselves.
Whenever law was mentioned, it was mostly to state that there needs to be a general rule and saying that X general rule is acceptable to them.
That's why the age of consent is usually set by the state. It's because it's more or less used like a safeguard to ensure that the most likely age of maturity is met, so that these people are most likely capable of actually recognizing all the dangers and consequences involved in sexual activity.
And I would hope that, be it through a law or an anarchist social standard, that there would be a set general rule as to what age it is okay for people to engage in sexual activity with one another, despite whatever quote-unquote exceptions to the rule Rylee or any of his ilk would like to pull out of their asses.
For there have been many laws that have been unjustified, like slavery and taxation.
You know what? At this point, I'm just going to edit out most, if not all, of the rest of his takes when it comes to people making appeals to law, because that's just him addressing the low-hanging fruit of the anti-pedo activists, and I'm just not interested much in defending that. So, next.
But that's not the end of it. Not just disagreeing with someone, but moving hate mobs towards people.
Assuming that you've committed pedophilia yourself, Rylee, and why I word it that way is because I haven't seen the evidence yet of him committing such a heinous act, and didn't just vocalize your shitty opinions on the matter, I really don't blame them. In fact, I'd probably even say it's for the best. If anyone, for that matter, has been found and proven to commit something objectively evil like murder, rape, or, yes, even pedophilia, is it really a bad thing to send a hate mob after them, for fuck's sake?
Accusing people that you're friends with of also being pedophiles,
Okay, if anyone is calling anybody who merely associates with a pedophile, calling them a pedophile as well, well then I'd say that it's hyperbolic, and really the committing of, sexual activities on a kid would be what define you as a pedo. But if you are really so willing to actively have friendly associations with people who have committed pedophilia, then it really calls into question your moral character. Just putting that out there.
Threats of doxing, harassing, and violence towards others who hold questionable or opposing views.
Okay, I'd even go so far to say that if you're actively having friendly associations with people who advocate and, defend pedophilia, that is almost as equally as bad.
On top of this, saying that I'm the only one who's the true anarchist.
That's pretty ironic and almost hypocritical, actually, because you really have no place to be talking about and criticizing purity spiraling when you later yourself say that you proudly will commit purity spiraling yourself, Rylee.
I'm sorry. Do not work with the police and be consistent. I don't care if I sound like I'm purity spiraling. I will spin so fast I fall down like a kid playing Ring Around the Rosie. This has been a big problem, to the point that I was pressured into backing down on a lot of things I say and almost leaving the internet in fear of my own friends being harmed.
If piece of shit pedo defenders like you, Rylee, leave and never return back to the internet, good riddance, bitch.
Not anymore. I'm not backing down from these pieces of shit. These people who want to harm the libertarian movement.
You're a harm to the libertarian movement.
And might I just say quickly to all the non-libertarians out there that as a libertarian, and by the way, yes, I'm going to call myself a libertarian. I do not care what anarchists like to say that I'm not. I disavow. This guy, this piece of crap, Rylee, does not represent all libertarians. Not even in the slightest.
Are terrible, from threatening others to willing to use the cops. And I'm sorry, if you say, I won't use the cop, but I'll get my friend to do so, you're just still using the fucking police by proxy.
I think that even a good portion of the ANCAPs in my following can agree that attacking pedophiles would be one of the more legitimate functions of the police. That is, if they do successfully arrest a pedophile.
Using the police to swat people. Yes, this has happened. I have a friend, not gonna name them, who draws lolly and Shota.
Fuck 'em.
At this point, they were a libertarian. They had their house swatted and raided because someone disagreed with them over fictional art.
Okay, I'm going to at least say that, at least in my opinion anyways, I don't really think that it is worth police resources to be arresting somebody just for drawing fictional art, lolly, all that shit and whatnot, or really worth vigilante justice resources for that matter. Just personally anyways, I wouldn't really shed much of a tear if they were to get swatted on or whatever, but I mean, I would still say that it is pretty abhorrent to be associating with somebody who proudly draws lolly and all that shit, but all the same.
If you're gonna call yourself a libertarian and then also use police to get your way, I'm sorry, you're not a libertarian. You are a scumbag piece of shit.
Oh, fuck off, Thirsty Fox, Iron ANCAP, Gavi the Mutualist, Ethical Pirate, whatever the flying fuck you're going to call yourself next week. It really just depends on how you use the police, on what you're calling the police on. If it's a case of somebody's rights getting violated in the way of murder or rape or whatever else have you, well then no, it is not. Or even pedophilia. Yes, I am putting that under the classification as well, of when it's right for action to be taken, be it through vigilante justice or police. Now, if somebody is ratting somebody out to the police because of drug possession, well then yeah, that is obviously anti-libertarian. Or if somebody is calling the police on somebody just for espousing a difference of opinion on who should be president of the United States, then yeah, that's a piece of shit move, obviously. But other stuff, like I just mentioned earlier, no, not really, no.
And I even had people say in the chat, two 15-year-olds who send nudes to each other must be punished for sending child porn. Yes, the two teens send nudes to each other, or even have nudes on their phone. They are arrested.
Okay, I agree that two underage people of the same age intermingling with one another is not a violation of any rights, liberties, or bodily autonomy, and is ultimately not worthy of action aside from you as a parent getting involved. But that's not one of the gripes that me and my direct associates have in this whole debate. It's with an adult, someone who is fully capable of consent fucking a kid, someone who has little to no considerable capability of consent, and is far more malicious than two teens showing off each other's genitals.
By continuing to use the state as your source to stop people's behavior you may see as bad.
It's not just because we merely see it as bad. Pedophilia is bad.
Instead of, education or talking or debating, we're doing nothing but further growing the state and reliance upon the state.
I'm really not seeing the argument or logic as to why we shouldn't use the state to prevent rapists, murderers, and yes, even pedos from their heinous acts. But what would I know? I'm just a filthy statist, right?
Hoplu said that, the state cannot set the age of consent, which he's absolutely right.
But my Covenant community can. Well, yes, Hoplu, you're right. The Covenant community can, but if, say, a kid who lives there is 14, your age of consent's 21, and they decide to move to a Covenant community in which it's 14, then yes.
That concept sounds pretty much like a bunch of proto-states to me, for lack of better terminology. But I'll have to make a video talking about Hoppianism and why I think that anarchy would basically revolve full circle back into turning into a state some other videos, so moving on.
Now, that everyone's here, I can give my exact view on the thing. My view is, everyone has self-ownership. To claim someone does not have self-ownership until you meet an arbitrary point is to prove slavery to be okay.
Bullshit! For one, brain development and the ability to consent is not arbitrary, thank you. Secondly, me and my associates haven't made the argument that children don't own themselves and that the parents actually own them, so stop it with the hyperbole about slavery. Really, what I know to be the philosophy from any sane anti-pedo activist is that parents don't own their kids, but that if anything, they're more like stewards of their kids. And really, if I'm to be quite honest, the whole parents own their children philosophy doesn't work as an argument against pedophilia almost as much as any kids have no rulers but complete freedom kind of argument that you're going to essentially give here soon to justify pedophilia, Rylee. Because if we're to understand that children are their parents' property, then that would mean that the parents can do literally anything that they want with them and they wouldn't be in the wrong.
Including sticking their dick in them.
So fuck that shit. I don't ascribe to the parents own their kids argument, nor does anyone else I know. Next soundbite.
Now, just because someone has self-ownership does not mean they have the ability to do such things.
That distinction has little to no importance in our arguments.
For an example, a 2-year-old cannot fly an airplane. They don't have the ability. Doesn't mean they don't have the right to fly an airplane. There was a story of a 9-year-old kid who drove his sister to McDonald's, followed all the traffic laws, didn't hit anyone, didn't break any property, didn't violate any of the non-aggression principle. But he was still arrested for driving underage.
Fine, don't arrest him. At most, bring him to his parents. But I don't see a child operating equipment or machinery with there being rhetorically no bodily harm done to be equivalent to them having sex with an adult when there is long-lasting or even permanent psychological damage done to them.
Because we don't believe in a society of slavery, and because libertarians believe all associations must be voluntary, and that each person owns themselves, we cannot put an arbitrary view on when that person owns themselves.
Taking this strictly down to the issue of sexuality, didn't you say that you are somewhat okay with there being a litmus test for such?
I don't think we should have a legal age of consent because everyone's psychology, biology, anatomy, everything, how they developed, how they mature is different in each individual. Now, could we have some kind of litmus test or some kind of way to know if someone's able to, reach that informed level of information? Possibly we could, right? While parents can play the role of guardian to protect a child, at the same time when that individual is ready to leave home and move out, example, Say your 12-year-old says, you know what? I have a Bitcoin miner. I don't like to go into bed at 10. I'm going to go get my own apartment. If you were to lock the door and say you cannot leave, you are no better than the state, a kidnapper, and an abuser.
I can't believe I'm dealing with all this trite. He really just called the majority of parents in the modern Western world abusers. Basically for preventing their own kids from running away in a lashing out fit of rage over even if it was the most petty of things for them to throw a fit over. It's not like every parent who's ever done such a thing was beating the shit out of them in the process. Don't get so fucking hyperbolic, for fuck's sake. What if they don't have a Bitcoin miner? What if they die from a lack of resources because they foolishly ran away too soon? Shouldn't the parents have taken firm responsibility to prevent them from dying in such a manner, whilst also teaching them the ways to run life like an at least somewhat sophisticated adult?
Each person who owns themselves in a libertarian society has a right to their own self-autonomy, to their own self. And when they're able to act upon that autonomy, only they get to decide when they're ready to do something, when they're ready to drive, when they're ready to rent, when they're ready to move out, when they're ready to even fuck. No one has that right. Now you may say, well, they live in my house, therefore I don't want them to have sex. Which you could claim is true. Yeah, you could tell your 12-year-old, no, I don't want you dating a 30-year-old. That's fucked up. I find that disgusting. You can't do that. But if that 12-year-old has the ability to move out, you cannot hold them against their will.
There it is, folks. We have seen the part of where Rylee exposes himself as a pedo apologist, even though he says that technically he doesn't say that pedophilia is justifiable, that it's immoral.
And obviously, I would not even justify having sex with a 9-year-old as being good, because they have not even reached puberty yet.
He still says that preventing such would be immoral, even more so in of itself.
Yeah, you could tell your 12-year-old, no, I don't want you dating a 30-year-old. That's fucked up. I find that disgusting. You can't do that. But if that 12-year-old has the ability to move out, you cannot hold them against their will. That is being a state. That is imposing your status opinion upon them.
Honestly,
Go on.
Honestly, yeah.
Oh yeah, and Gavi agrees with him too. Yeah, fuck both of these two punk-ass pieces of shit.
Like, you have to remain consistent with libertarianism. It's either you have self-ownership or you don't. There is no in-between. You cannot say, well, I partly own my kid, but once they get a certain age, that means they get their self-ownership. No! That's not how it works! For order for parents, for, like, them to raise, like, their kid, the child has to agree to be raised by the parents. If the child does not agree, the child can disassociate at any time.
Oh, so if my 6-year-old was throwing a big ol' hissy fit, saying how they wish I wasn't their dad, and just being a general brat and was running away right into the busy street, I should just let them get mauled over by car into roadkill?
Fuck that. Damn right I'm gonna yank them away from running into especially that kind of general area.
I'd be an irresponsible parent if I just let my kids run themselves into trouble when they're underage and still under my responsibility, damn it.
And it's fine to have disagreements, say, well, I'd rather not do that, or I don't agree with that. It's not fine to say, oh, this person's a pedo, this person's a killer, this person's bad, or we need to raid this person, oh, downvote this person's video.
Did you seriously just say that you have an issue with people raiding unapologetic killers, Rylee? Wow, you have went officially full retard, dumb fuck. And going towards the end there, he even has an issue with libertarians downvoting each other's videos? What a fucking snowflake! Even if I was to be an anarchist myself, for example, I'd probably still find it within me to want to dislike somebody else's video because I did not like the way that they approached the subject, or they were acting too smugly, or whatever else have you. Downvoting somebody's video is not anti-libertarian, and I'll even go so far to say that killing murderers is not anti-libertarian either. Deal with it. Now that's probably the perfect note to end this on. The parts I kept edited out are where he basically repeats to reiterate his primary points some more, and he also goes on about the whole agorist and Hoppian drama of how it's ridiculous, which I agree is really ridiculous, but I just didn't care enough to comment on that. I just wanted to respond to all the pedo defending bullshit and the attempts to conflate that with libertarianism. And to all the normies out there that might be watching, we disavow this piece of crap. Pedophilia is not a part of libertarianism. Period. But on that fact, what the fuck is with the rise in pedo defenses in recent years? It really is the type of shit to make someone want to go full Nazi. Like, good God, please forgive us. How the ever-living freakish shit did we get to this disturbing degeneracy? The internet. That's probably how. Ah, internet. How you turned out to be such a double-edged sword. I guess now is the part where I ought to offer my thesis on pedophilia. I don't care that much if people want to propose that the age of consent between a fully grown adult and a just turned adult should be at 17, 18, 19, or even 21, but there should be an age of consent. Any adult who is like 3 years or definitely 4 years older than somebody else who is below the age of consent even by a month is found to be having sexual relations with somebody who's below the age of consent or found to be grooming them for eventual sexual relations should be arrested and thrown in jail at the bare minimum or even executed at the maximum. Ultimately, kids are not fully their own agents as their brains are not fully developed to consent. So therefore, stewardship falls under the parents they were born to or whatever adults they were consensually given guardianship to. They're not their property. The adults don't own them, as you keep going for that low-hanging fruit, Rylee. And as stewards, or guardians rather, it is their responsibility to keep their kids and other people's kids possibly from going to any predatory type of adult that looks to get off on them and cause likely permanent psychological and physical damage, even if it's against what the kid describes as their will. Even if you want to pull some anecdotes of where the kid was living a perfectly happy life of consensually having sex with their adult partner. I have to press X to doubt on that, as there have been plenty of examples of kids who were traumatized by their own sexual experience with an adult and they were compliant with them in it, so they think they're giving consent when really they're just being manipulated by the pedophilic piece of shit. This is why we have an age of consent. Whether by law under a government or by ethics and morals under anarchy, we should have an objective age of consent standard. If a government does exist, well, I say that it's well within minarchism that we'd have those laws and track down and arrest any adult having sex with children. Yes, with taxpayer dollars. Because guess what? Pedophilia is far worse than taxation. Change my mind. Even without a government existing, I would damn well hope that within anarchy that there'd be pedo lynching mobs to string up every single old fogey that fucks 12-year-olds that are being manipulated to say yes to the idea of having sex with them. This is the most painful subject for me to tackle, y'all. Anti-pedo activism really isn't my forte. The biggest reason why I decided to respond to this stream was because, two reasons actually. One, because one of my longtime subscribers and friends of the channel decided to ask that I do a response video to this, or respond to it in general. And secondly, because Rylee is conflating libertarianism and pedophilia with one another, and you aren't a truly consistent libertarian if you do not basically allow pedophilia to happen, as long as the child quote-unquote consents to it. So this subject really shouldn't be a topic up for debate, y'all. But if Rylee or Gavi end up coming across this video and want to have me on stream or something, hey, my streams are open. I'll gladly have the both of them on, and I'll get Metal Doomer and or Cast Warfox to come on with me, and we can just rant at their faces. I'm the Dark Conservatarian. You all have a good day, except you pedos watching. Hashtag save our children. If you guys like this video, hit that thumbs up button below. If you have some criticisms to me or think there are some areas where I can improve, comment them down below. And if you want to see more
Dark, edgy content like this,
response videos, news shows, hangout streams, well then hit that subscribe button, because I'm your man. Hope to see you all in the next video. See you all later, and God bless.